So today we're continuing our series on Peter, and I just want to start with a story from one of my friends from back home. So home for me is many places, but in this instance what I'm referring to is home for me in high school, which was New Hampshire. So one of my good friends there, his name was Tim, and we were good buddies all throughout high school, and then in college, of course, like many of us, we went our separate ways, and I went to Chicago, where I've stayed since, and he went to Las Vegas. And so Tim, after being in Las Vegas for about 7 years, he told me one day, as we were talking on the phone, that Vegas was starting to wear on him. But it wasn't what you might expect. It wasn't the late nights, the early mornings that were starting to wear on him. It wasn't that, Vegas is this place where you're constantly seeing new people, where there's always a visitor, there's always tourists. But that wasn't what was wearing on him. It wasn't even just this constant, turning over of friends or constant fast-paced life that was wearing on him. What he told me that was wearing on him was that it seems like in all of his relationships, people were more interested in what he could give them than who he was. Have you guys ever felt that way before? Have you guys ever had a friendship where you feel like someone's more interested in what you can bring to the table of that relationship than who you actually are? And I think if we're honest, we've all felt that way before. And we've all felt like we have been on the receiving end of that, where we know that we could be treated better. We feel in some sense that we are being treated as an end, as a means to an end rather than an end in itself. But I think if we're also honest with ourselves at the same point, I think all of us know that we've also been on the flip side of that. If all of us know deep down inside that we've been treated by pretty much every person in our life at some point, whether it's the whole relationship or just a part of it, not the way that we ought to, and we feel like we've been treated for what we can give rather than who we are, I think if we're honest with ourselves, we all know that we've all also been the one who has used another person in some way. We had to use them to make us feel good. We wanted their presence for something. And I think one simple way to kind of prove that is just this idea of reciprocation. We've all been on the receiving end. We feel like we've given a lot to a relationship, but we're not receiving that back. And if we feel frustrated in those moments, it's a good sign that to some extent we're looking for something other than just the person. We're looking for something in addition to the relationship. And so that's what I want to focus on today. Just saying, is it possible for us to love someone without an agenda? Is it possible to not have an angle on a relationship that we're in? Is it possible just to want the good of the other person rather than wanting something from them? And today, as we're continuing on in our second week of this series in 1 Peter, week one, Luke looked at just this whole idea of is it possible for us to find lasting hope and joy? This whole series has been called Living in Hope. But today, we're going to kind of continue on looking at hope. We're going to look at it from a little different angle. We're going to say, what is the relationship between love and hope? And then we're going to kind of ask the question again, how might the way that we hope, how might that affect our love? And might that even be able to help us to be people who can love others without an agenda, who can love without having an angle on what we want out of the relationship? So if you want to follow along with me today, we're going to be in 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 13 through chapter 2, verse 3. I'll be reading from the ESV, and it's on the screen right behind us, so if you're able to follow along on the screen, or if you have a copy behind you, or if you're on that screen too. So I'm going to read from up the screen. We'll start by reading the whole passage, and then we'll dive right in. So verse 1. Therefore, preparing your minds for action, and being sober-minded, set your hope fully on the grace that will be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. As obedient children, do not be conformed to the passions of your former ignorance, but as he who called you is holy, you also be holy in all of your conduct. Since it is written, you shall be holy, for I am holy. And if you call on him as Father, who judges impartially, according to each one's deeds, conduct yourselves with fear throughout the time of your exile, knowing that you were ransomed from the futile ways inherited from your forefathers, not with perishable things such as silver or gold, but with the precious blood of Christ, like that of a lamb without blemish or spot. He was foreknown before the foundation of the world, but was made manifest in the last times for the sake of you, who through him are believers in God, who raised him from the dead and gave him glory, so that your faith and hope are in God. Having purified your souls by your obedience to the truth for a sincere brotherly love, love one another earnestly from a pure heart. And since you've been born again, not of perishable seed, but of imperishable, through the living and abiding word of God, for all flesh is like grass, and all its glory like the flowers of the grass. The grass withers, and the flowers fall, but the word of the Lord remains forever. And this is the word, is the good news that he was preached to you. Chapter 2. So put away all malice and all deceit and all hypocrisy and envy and all slander. Like newborn infants, long for that pure spiritual milk, that by it you may grow up into salvation. If indeed you have tasted that the Lord is good. Thanks be to God. So when we look at this text, if we read, starting at verse 13 of chapter 1, I don't think we have to get too far until we don't really want to follow it. Like at the very beginning, after the first phrase or two, it says, set your hope fully, that word fully, set your hope fully on Jesus. So it has a little bit more there. It says, set your hope fully on the grace that will be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. But what the text is really saying is saying, set your hope fully on Jesus. And I think, if you're not a follower of Christ, why that might be challenging. It's like, that sounds esoteric. Why would we set our hope on Jesus? That sounds very intangible. And yet, if you are, I think the word that you're going to have a challenge with is that word fully. I think the reason for that, too, is just that we've been kind of taught to always have a plan B. If you're Myers-Briggs type J, you have a plan C through Z. And so we've been taught to have a backup plan always. We've been taught to have a lot of options. I was a finance major, and what my professor always told me is don't put all your eggs in one basket. Diversify. And so as we bring that into our faith, we like the idea of having hope on Jesus. That sounds really good. And yet we also want to have separate hopes as well, because part of us, I think, part of us has this fear that if we set our hope only on Jesus, maybe we're going to be disappointed. And so rather than just risking it all on Jesus, there's this temptation that we have where we feel like, maybe we can just set part of our hopes on these other things, so that at least we have a chance of having some hope realized. So what else do we hope in? Three that I came up with is pleasure, relationships, and career. And then when I say those words, pleasure, relationships, and career, you might think, that's not really what I put my hope in. And I think at first glance, it's pretty safe to say that, that doesn't maybe resonate with you. I don't want to put my hope in relationships, pleasure, or career. But what if we kind of redefine hope a little bit? And this isn't really going away from the definition, but what if we think about hope as what we are longing for in the good life? So what if we think of hope as our what will bring us the good life? So now let's think about those things. If we think about pleasure, well, of course, that doesn't sound like, I'm just going to be this hedonist who's going to put my whole hope in pleasure, but to an extent. If we live each week thinking of the weekend, if we live each phase of the school year thinking about break or thinking about that next vacation, what we're really doing is we're kind of putting our hope not in what we're doing now, we're putting our hope in the future, but it's in these change of circumstances or career. Many of you are students, but you might think, I would never put my hope in my career. And yet, right now as you're a student, you might be thinking, my life will be so much better once I'm done with school. Or my life will be so much better once I can complete the next task I'm on, or get that next job promotion, or get the next thing that I'm working on, or climb that next ladder. And it's not saying that those things aren't good, that we shouldn't strive for those, shouldn't have goals, and yet saying that if we think that is what is going to bring us the good life, if we just think that if we can reach that thing, that life will be better, In a sense, we are really putting at least part of our hope in that thing. Or we can do it also with relationships. If we just have a few more relationships, or if we have a few more quality relationships, that then we'll finally be satisfied. I find myself doing that all the time. I'll have an event, whether it's church or a friend event, and I'm thinking oh man, if only a few more people showed up, then I would feel affirmed. Then I would actually feel valued. What I'm doing there again, which is something we've all done, is we're essentially saying if that thing happened differently with the quantity or quality of friendships in my life, then I would feel satisfied, then I would be content. What we're really doing is we're redefining what the good life is. And hope, on its own, it sounds esoteric, but if we think of it as what is the good life that we're hoping for, that we're longing for, then I can think we can see how easy it is to get our hope mixed up and to not have it just be fully on Jesus. So what's the problem, though? What's the problem with having a mixed hope? Why not diversify? Why not have all of our eggs in just this one basket of faith? Why not have it in all those things, in faith, but also pleasure, and also family and work and relationships, all those things. Why not diversify? I think the problem is that when we have these competing visions for the good life, it's really hard for them not to clash. So think of a soldier. Think of a soldier who is going into battle, but his two visions of what the good life is one is pleasure, and the other is victory. So if you think about this now, the night before he goes into battle, he goes and he drinks heavily and gets wasted. And then the next day, because he wants to have fun, he wants to have pleasure. And the next day he goes into battle and he's hungover on the battlefield. You see how those two competing visions for the good life, they don't always mesh up fully. I think it's the same for our faith too. If we are striving on one hand to be having our hope in Jesus, and on the second hand, having our hope in relationships, whether that's friendship or even romantic relationship or intimacy. At some point, those are two different visions that we are building our life around. And that's really what the ultimate problem is that whatever you set your hope on, you're going to build your life around. Let's think about that. For the different hopes you have, you're going to kind of organize your life around achieving that. And so it's really hard to be organizing your life around two different visions. In a sense, we can really only organize our lives around one. And so Peter goes on to say in verse 14, "As obedient children, do not be conformed to the passions of your former ignorance." So Peter, what he's saying here is he knows that what we hope in, we're going to organize our lives around. And so he's saying, your former days before you knew Christ, you organized your life around your former passions of when you were once in ignorance. But what he's saying now is now that you've stepped into this Christian life, he's saying, reorganize your life around your hope fully in God. And so I just want to say a little bit of what he is saying and what he's not saying here. So what hope is not. Hope is not meaning that you have no goals, no ambition, or no dreams. Saying that your hope is fully in Jesus does not mean that all those things are gone. Because think about it. God created, he created human beings, and when he created us, he said it's not good for humans to be alone. And so he created us for relationships. And when he created us, he said that we were very good. And he also, while Adam and Eve were in the garden, he told them to be good stewards of the garden, to work the garden, to till the garden. So work is a good thing as well. It's good for us to work. It's good for us to have goals and dreams in our work as well. And yet, the problem comes when we organize our entire life around it because we're trying to find our hope within it, because that is our road to the good life. And so what hope is it's not just looking for meaning when we hope in something. Because meaning is fine. It's fine to find something meaningful about relationships. We should find meaning in relationships. And we should find meaning in our work. God has created us for those things, to find meaning in Him and to also enjoy His creation. And yet when you hope in something, you're not just looking for meaning. You're also looking, in a sense, for that thing to complete you. So take a chance and just think of what is that thing that you are tempted by to put your hope in? Isn't there in some sense that you're hoping that if you can acquire that, if you can realize that you're hoping that in some sense it will complete you? And when we're looking for something to complete us, in that moment, what we're really doing is we're worshiping that thing, and we're asking for it to be our God. We're looking for the divine within it. And yet the challenge is that whenever we put our hope in resources and job and friendships and romance, whenever we put our hope in those things don't actually have the capacity to be our gods. They don't actually have the capacity within them to have our hope fully realized in them. And that's why, whenever you put your hope in something and you acquire it, isn't there always that little bit of that bittersweetness? And so what do we do in those moments? What do we do when our hope has been acquired? We wanted that promotion, we wanted to finish that school, and we thought, once I get there, life will be different. I thought that recently with a son. I thought, once I have a son, there's going to be something, existentially different about life. And there's not. Even though I enjoy being a father, there's not something existentially different about it. And so what we naturally do in those moments is we have this strategy where we just think, I just need to realign where my hope is next. If I made that money but it wasn't satisfying, I just need to make more. If I got the promotion but it wasn't satisfying, I just need to get a higher promotion. If I got those good grades and it wasn't satisfying, I just need to go for bigger goals, maybe a PhD or something. And again, none of those things are bad. None of those things are good. God created us to do those things. And yet, when we just constantly are just moving the dial, moving the radar to that next thing that we're going to hope in, and we constantly feel disappointed. Because again, those things don't have the capacity to realize our hopes. But when we instead put our hope fully in Jesus, it actually frees us. It frees us to enjoy relationships just on their own terms. We don't have to look for a hope with them. We can just enjoy them. Or when you just look for grades, to get them, but you're not putting your hope with them, but you want to do your best because you want to learn. You can just enjoy the learning process without this pressure of having to find who you are within it. And the list can go on as well. And the point is, that whatever you organize your life around, that is where you're going to be putting your hope in. So when you put your hope in Jesus, it actually frees you to enjoy those things and not have to ask for them to be divine for you. You can enjoy them for what Jesus intended them to be. But you might be asking, you might be thinking, what does all this have to do with loving people without an agenda? And I'm so glad you asked. Should we get into that now? So let's think about real quick for a second how our hope shapes our perceptions of people. So remember, what you organize your life around, that is ultimately what you hope in. So if you organize your life, let's just say, around work and success and recognition, or moving up on the job and the career ladder, then just for a second, think of how that shapes how you view people. If what you're really going after, what you're hoping is success or your career, then people will either be help or hindrance into going after what you're trying to achieve. They will actually either be assets or liabilities as they help or hinder you towards realizing your hope. And if that's how you view people, how can we not view people as hindrances or help to our achieving our goals? How can we not view people with an agenda? If people are either going to help us realize our hope or not, it's pretty much impossible not to view every single person with an agenda or with an angle. Now let's look for a second of how having our hope fully in Christ, how that might shape our perception of people. I just want to take a look at the character of Jesus. So check out verses 18 through 20 with me. Again, verse 18 reads, "Knowing that you were ransomed from the futile ways inherited from your forefathers, not with perishable things such as silver or gold, but with the precious blood of Christ, like the Lamb without blemish or spot. He was foreknown for the foundation of the world, was made manifest in the last times for your sake." So did you catch that? Did you catch the character of Jesus' love? It says that Jesus' blood there was precious and he poured it out for us. But who did he do that for? And does the text say he did that for himself? No. It says at the end of verse 20 that he did that for the sake of you. You know, he did that with you. And so the whole challenge in any relationship, friendship, romantic, teacher, whatever, the challenge in loving anyone without an agenda is reciprocation. You know, it's one thing that if we are feeling like that love is being reciprocated right back to us. But the second it's not, that's when we feel like I don't even want to be friends with that person anymore. Like, I do so much for them. Like, I'm always bringing them food. I'm reminding them of their birthday. Like, I'm just there for them. Like, I show up for them. But what do they do for me? They don't come to me. They don't do anything for me. They're not there for me in my hard times. Like I was there for them in their hard times. You know, like, why in those moments do we want to ditch that friend or that person in our life? Well, it's because we feel like they haven't reciprocated the love that we've given them. When we look at how Jesus loves us, it actually frees us from that whole cycle. It breaks the chain of the need for reciprocation. Because look how Jesus loved us. Look how his love was not met with reciprocation. You know, Jesus essentially was willingly murdered for our sake. So that's us to not something you can reciprocate. He forgave those. Remember on the cross, you know, he says, "Forgive those, for they don't know what they're doing." So he forgave the very people who murdered him. I mean, he was rejected. And think about how we don't reciprocate love after we've been rejected because our feelings are really hurt. He was rejected by the Romans, by the Jewish people who were of his own ethnicity. He was rejected even by his own followers. And I think of Peter, who on the very night of his death, he rejected even knowing him, not even knowing him 3 separate times. And yet Jesus was willing to die, said, for our sake. So think about the nature of the one we follow, of the character of his love. You know, the love of Jesus is this love that is not about, I'm only going to love you if you love me, first or second, it doesn't matter. But Jesus' love instead is saying that regardless of how you love me, I'm going to continue loving you. That's what shapes up this love. And so if we mold our lives around Jesus, if we embody this love, look what verse 22 says that it will do within your heart, that it will do to how you treat others. It says in verse 22, having purified your souls by your obedience to the truth for a sincerely brotherly love, love one another earnestly from a pure heart. So did you catch that? Did you catch the 2 things that it says that it produces here? It said it produces, one, a sincere love, which is, you know, what we're looking for, love without an agenda. But then second, it says it produces a pure heart. So sincere love and a pure heart, and that's pretty much right there already. And 2 things that what it means to love without an agenda. Okay, so that's great. Like, we want to love like Jesus. I think, you know, any of us could agree, like, we all want to love that way. So if Jesus' love is here and our love is here, like where it is a reciprocation-based love, like how do we move over here? How do we move to even begin to love like Jesus? How do we begin to set our hope fully on Jesus, that we might organize our life and our love around the way he loves? So the first thing we need to do is we need to have a new vision for the good life. And we need to have a new vision for ourselves, like for what is the good life. Check out verse 15, because I think it gives us the vision here. This 15 says, 15. But as he who called you is holy, you also be holy in all your conduct. Since it is written, you shall be holy, for I am holy. So what this is saying is that if we set our vision for our life, like the good life, around holiness, then we will be holy as God is holy. Now, I just want to ask you, like, what is your perception on the word holy? Does anyone, like when we think of like pursuing holiness, does anyone actually have like a really positive image there? Does anyone actually like have like an inspiration, like they hear the word holy and they're like, yes, I'm on board, I want that, I want to pursue that? I don't think if we're honest, really any of us do. I think in part is because when we think of like holy, you know, part of us thinks of, you know, it's not in God's terms, you know, that's fine. But when we think about human terms, isn't it like, if we're honest with ourselves, like, don't we kind of think of it as just being like rule following, or being like a fun police, anti-fun, rules only. Like it kind of feels like joyless obedience. When I hear the word holy, that's I guess what would summarize it the best, is that being holy, pursuing holiness sounds like joyless obedience. But if that's our view of holiness, what does that mean for us as we pursue it? I think what it means is it's kind of two things. We're either going to run the opposite direction of holiness, or two, we're going to obey holiness. We're going to seek to be holy, but we're going to do it purely out of duty. So think about that second vision there. If we're pursuing holiness purely out of duty, that's not capturing our heart. And if it's not capturing our heart, what that means is we're going to pretty soon look again for something else to capture our heart. We're going to look for a different hope. Something in this world that will capture our heart, whether that's again in our resources and relationships and career. Like we're gonna again look back to have this divided hope. Because we as human beings have been created to have our heart captured by a vision, and we want a vision that does capture our heart. And so what I want to help us today here to do is to have a better vision of holiness. So if we usually think holiness as just purely joyless obedience, joyless rule following, what if instead we thought of holiness as ordering your life not around your vision for the good life, but of Jesus' vision for your best life? So I'm going to say that again. What if you thought of holiness not as your vision of the good life, but as Jesus' vision for your best life? What if holiness was this positive thing of pursuing Jesus' vision for your very best life? Question here. Who enjoys, if you're putting something together, you bought this new product, who enjoys following the directions? We got one little follower there. One person enjoys following the directions. I will follow the directions sometimes, but sometimes I think, I can probably take a little bit of a shortcut here. I can probably make this product, but I'm just going to do it a little bit of a hack here, just to make it a little bit faster. And whenever I do that, it always inevitably takes maybe twice as long. And then after you have it complete, you wind up and you see your product is complete, and yet you have this whole set of maybe 20 random items here. And you think to yourself, those were superfluous. What have you done to that product? You may have made it your own, and yet the product you've killed its structural integrity. And so that's I think what we're doing when we have our vision for the good life instead of Jesus' vision for our best life. It's our vision for the good life. We think that we actually know what's a better hope for our life, God. You may have created us, you may have created the universe, and yet we think we actually have a better idea for what is the best hope. And that's why pursuing holiness seems so lame, or the last thing we want to do. I've been recently listening to this book by this philosopher from Calvin College. His name is James A.K. Smith, and it's called Desiring the Kingdom. And I think at this one point in the book, he keeps speaking of the word law here, but just change the word law as you hear it with holiness, because I think they're pretty intertwinable for what he's saying here. But he just gives a really healthy picture for why pursuing holiness, why pursuing God's way is actually better than any other hope we can come up with on our own. So let me read this for us. He says, the announcement of the law, so again, interject holiness or holy, reminds us that we inhabit not nature, but creation, fashioned by a creator, and that there is a certain grain to the universe, grooves and tracks and norms that are a part of the fabric of the world. And all of creation flourishes best when our communities and relationships run with the grain of those grooves. Indeed, the biblical vision of human flourishing implicit in worship means that we are only properly free when our desires are rightly ordered, when they are bounded and directed to the end that constitutes our good. And that is why the law, or holiness, though it comes as a scandalous challenge to the modern desire for autonomy, is actually an invitation to be freed from teleological, which is essentially just purposeless, wandering. It is an invitation to find the good life by welcoming the boundaries of the law that guide us into this groove that constitutes the grain of the universe and is conducive to flourishing. And so again, when we set our hope on Jesus, like why I love that passage is he's trying to give us that's actually the vision for the good life. When we set our hope on him, that's how we were designed to be made by the Creator. Like that is the good life. But instead, when we follow our own hopes, it leads to not flourishing, but hampering and destruction. And so the first thing again is we just need a new vision for the good life. Not for what we think the good life is, but even trusting that following Jesus, building our life around his vision for our life, emulating him is actually the best life for us. So that's the first. The second is, we need to see that when we are caught by another hope, we need to surrender that. Because if we are honestly going to try to have that the vision for our best life is following and honoring God, and we're going to be constantly tempted by other visions. We're going to be constantly tempted to just flirt with, maybe God will be obedient, but maybe God, that vision is actually better for me. And we see that through our heart's desires. And it's also going to happen like every time you're disappointed. Every time you're disappointed in people, you're going to be tempted to love them with an agenda. You're going to be tempted because they haven't reciprocated for you. I'm not going to reciprocate for them. And essentially we move into a vision for our life, not of emulating Jesus' life, but following our own vision. But do you see how pursuing holiness, how Jesus' vision for our best life frees us from having an agenda with people? When we model our life after his, what we're doing is we're modeling our life after one whose love was completely sacrificially other-oriented. And then when we model our life around an other-oriented love, we're left with no excuse to complain or say it's not fair when someone else isn't reciprocating our love. And yet, whenever especially I talk about this in marriage counseling with a new couple, whenever I talk about this, there's always, every single time, guaranteed, someone is going to talk about what fear they have if they love this way. And the fear, I think, is pretty universal. Can you guess what the fear is? The fear is that if I love the way Jesus loves others, if I love completely other-oriented and am not concerned about reciprocation, the biggest fear that we all have is that people are going to walk all over us. Does that make sense? It makes sense why if we love in a sacrificial way or we're scared that people are going to take advantage of us. But what I tell them is that nothing can be further from the truth. Think about in your life, if I've definitely had relationships with people, friends and romantic, where people have walked all over me. Let's picture a relationship maybe where that's happening in your life. Think about the reasons why you let someone walk all over you. The reasons for me, and I'm guessing it's probably the same for you, why we've maybe let someone mistreat us, might have something to do with that we wanted to continue receiving love from that person, or we wanted to continue to receive friendship or something that they gave us, whether that was an ability to go out and do something on a Friday night, or we wanted something from that relationship. And so if we're honest with ourselves, like the way that we treated them really wasn't love. Because if we loved them, we wouldn't worry about what we're getting out of the relationship. We wouldn't be afraid that if we spoke up, we'd be broken off and that we'd be left without them. Instead, truly loving the other is challenging them and not concerned with how it's going to turn out for us, but challenging them because we want their growth. We want them to mature and look more like Jesus. And so when we have an other-oriented love, we don't have to worry about being walked all over, because when we actually love the other, we don't have to fear of loss, but instead we get to have the opportunity and the freedom to challenge. Because it's not about us. We care about their good, and that's essentially what not having an agenda is. We don't care about what happens to us, but we care so much about what happens to them. So again, the second challenge is to surrender constantly, daily, our temptation that we're going to want to put our hope in other things as we're seeking to live this surrendered life of holiness to God, organize our life around that vision. The third and final one of setting our hope on Jesus is that we need to give people permission. We need to give people permission in our life to speak into our lives and to point out where we are setting our hope on other things, apart from setting our hope fully on Christ. And so as a church, we have community groups, and we have this event coming up on next Thursday where it's just a space for developing community. And kind of the point of all those things is that, if we are going to be a church, we need to give people permission to speak into our lives. We all have blind spots. We all have things that we don't notice, and none of us are going to be perfect on our own. So we need people, and we need one another to speak into our lives. We need to give people that permission to tell us when they see that we are placing our hope in other things apart from Jesus. So I just want to end here at Village Church with just giving us a challenge. I just want to give us this challenge of setting our hope fully on Jesus. We have so many reasons to set our hope on Him, to organize our life around Him. The first is that it's against the best thing for your life. It's better than your good vision for your life. It's Jesus' best vision for your life. He's the one that created you. He's the one that knows what is actually best for your life. Secondly, it's the only way that we're going to love another person without an agenda. And lastly, when we set our hope on Jesus, it's the only way that we can love others the way that He has loved us. Set your hope fully on Him. Let's pray. Father, I just pray right now that You would be revealing in my heart and revealing in each of our hearts, Lord, one area of our life, Lord, just one place right now in our thoughts, illuminate for us where we are tempted to find our hope in something outside of You, Lord. Lord, help us to reveal the motivations of our heart to us in this moment of why we want to hope in something else, why we want to find our hope and our joy in something else apart from You, Lord. Whether we understand ourselves or not, Lord, I pray that we would repent. I pray that each of us, Lord, would lay that at Your feet, knowing that You have already died for that sin, Lord. And may You give us a new vision, Lord, a new vision that would be capturing our hearts, a new vision of pursuing holiness because You are holy. Knowing that as we emulate You, Lord, we are stepping into the best possible vision for our life. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but Lord, give us the strength to step into it because we know it is how You've created us and how You've intended us, Your creation, to live. So Lord, we pray that You would give us illumination into our hearts, but also the strength, Lord, and the courage to step into that vision, Lord, rather than the infinite competing visions, Lord, for our hope. And as we step in, Lord, we just pray that You would be challenging and transforming our hearts each day. I ask all this in Your Son's name. Amen.